So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us to the 2025-26 Scoring and Reporting webinar for CAASPP and ELPAC. My name is Dina Becerra, and I'm on the training and outreach team as well as the scoring and reporting team at ETS. I will be facilitating today's webinar along with my co-presenters, Moses Jorge and Kelly Bolton. And we are also joined by a few members of the California Department of Education, or the CDE, as well as other colleagues from ETS who will be answering questions in the background. And we will be taking questions on the Padlet. The chat and question and answer feature in Zoom will be closed during the session. So do connect to the Padlet, and we will post that link in the chat. We do have categories set up for you. You can access the resource guide as well as the slides for this session on the Padlet itself, as well as on our website. And our team will be answering your questions as we go along, and we might do a few check-ins throughout the session to see if any questions should be talked about during the session. And let's see. We will mention some links throughout the session, and they're all located in the resource guide. There are quite a number of them. So they are all located in there, and be sure to take a look at that. They include websites, videos, and all kinds of resources that are helpful for scoring and reporting. And you can feel free to share this material with other administrators that weren't able to make it but do have an interest in using the information. Our agenda for today will consist of 7 sections, including this welcome section, as well as a brief overview of CAASPP and ELPAC. And we will also take a moment to reflect on where in the testing cycle we are currently. We will also cover important information and updates, information on how to access results and reports, scoring, and also communicating results. And before we close, we just want to thank you for joining us. All right, and so we'll go ahead and jump right in. This webinar was designed to equip you with the information and updates you need to access CAASPP and ELPAC results for your LEA and school sites. By the end of this webinar, we would like you to be able to access and understand CAASPP and ELPAC scoring, results, and reporting information, to determine next steps and additional resources that can help effectively communicate results to educational partners, and also to identify resources available to learn how to use the data. There are additional trainings and also data available. There are a number of recordings, including the introduction to SIRS, SIRS Beyond the Basics. There are a couple of those videos, accessing summative assessment results in SIRS, ELPAC results are in, and now what? All of these are available in the resource guide, as I mentioned. So be sure to take a look at that, share them with your teams. They're helpful resources. And I do want to mention also, starting next week, the Data Leadership Training Series, which focuses on making sense of CAASPP data within a culture of data use for system improvement to promote equitable outcomes for students. It'll also include the California Spanish Assessment or the CSA. So be sure to register for those trainings. There is a link to register for data leadership in your resource guide. And there will also be a series of new coordinator trainings, one of which will begin immediately after this webinar. And we do encourage new coordinators or anyone that might be a little experienced but might need a refresher to join those new coordinator trainings. So we do encourage you to join those. And again, links to all of this you can find in the resource guide. All right. And lastly, the Lexile and Quantile training series that comes in a little later in the year. Something that we definitely encourage you to explore and also to visit the Lexile and Quantile Hub with a lot of important information and helpful for parents to help them with the Lexile and Quantile information. All right, and so we're going to go ahead and talk about CAASPP and ELPAC. And so let's go ahead and jump right into that. So for CAASPP, we will be discussing the Smarter Balanced for English Language, Arts and Literacy, or ELA, and mathematics. Although we do focus on summative assessment data in this training, there is valuable interim assessment data as well. We will also talk about the California Science Test, or CAST, the summative assessments, and the CAST interim assessments. We will also talk about the California Alternate Assessments, or CAAs, for ELA Math and Science, as well as the California Spanish Assessment, or CSA, and also the CASP interim assessments for ELA Math and Science. For ELPAC, we will be discussing the summative ELPAC, the summative alternate ELPAC, and the ELPAC interim assessments. And so if you are new to assessment or need a refresher, we do have a series of resources for you, which you will again find in your resource guide. And those include new coordinator webinars, the CAASPP 101 and ELPAC 101 videos, and as well as the videos for our last pretest virtual training series, which focused on what's new for CAASPP and what's new for ELPAC. So, CAASPP results have three primary purposes. The results communicate students' progress in achieving Common Core State standards for ELA and mathematics, the California Next Generation Science Standards for Science, and Common Core State Standards in Espanol for the CSA. The results are used to calculate academic indicators on the California School Dashboard, and the results are also used to inform decisions that teachers and administrators can make about improving their educational program. So remember that CAASPP results provide a measure of where students are in the development of their knowledge and skills. And assessment results are only one measure and should be combined with other information to better understand student achievement. Okay, and moving on to the ELPAC results. The purposes for the ELPAC results, which include the summative ELPAC and the summative alternate ELPAC. They have four primary purposes. First, ELPAC results are used as an indicator of how English learner or EL students are progressing annually toward English language proficiency. ELPAC results are used to calculate the English learner progress indicator on the California School Dashboard. These results are also used for program monitoring and evaluation at the local level. And additionally, the summative ELPAC and summative alternate ELPAC results are used to meet the first criterion out of 4 criteria, in the process of reclassifying students as fluent English proficient and exiting EL programs and services. And as a reminder, the CDE clarified that the summative ELPAC score of level 4 or the summative alternate ELPAC score of level 3 is required for reclassification. And we do have the scoring and reporting guide that is now available for 25-26. This guide provides information about CAASPP and ELPAC for those needing to use the results of the assessments. It includes assessment and overviews, information about scoring, CAASPP achievement levels, task types within each ELPAC domain, reports, purposes, and how to interpret and use the results. And so there is a feature page in the scoring and reporting guide that includes links to all resources you will need to access, understand, and make use of assessment information. And one more guide we have for you is the ELPAC information guide that helps users understand the differences between initial ELPAC, initial alternate ELPAC, and summative ELPAC, and summative alternate ELPAC. This guide also helps users understand the initial identification of potential EL students, as well as annual assessments and reclassification processes for EL students. And this guide will also provide information about assessing EL students with disabilities. So be sure to look for that guide in the resource guide. Again, you can access the resource guide in the Padlet, as well as a copy of these slides. And one last topic to touch on is what's next. So we are nearly to the end of testing for 2025-26. And to look ahead of what's next, we encourage you to use your coordinator checklist to ensure that you have completed the necessary activities for 25-26. And again, links to the coordinator checklists are available in your resource guide. And you may now be able to distribute student score reports or SSRs through the parent or student portal, or by downloading them and disseminating printed or electronic versions through a secure local method. So make sure your staff in the staff in your LEA have appropriate access to scores. So that would include in TOMS or in SIRS. And today we're going to focus on how to access scores and reports in those systems. For more information on how to use CAASPP results, we recommend you attend the data leadership training series that starts next week. And that training will go more in depth about how CAASPP data, and it will start Tuesday, June 16th. There is again a registration link in the resource guide, so be sure to sign up. And it does list in the resource, in the link to the registration, the 4 sessions that will be held over the next couple of weeks. So be sure to take a look at that. And for information on how to use ELPAC results, access the ELPAC Results Are In Now What, asynchronous course in Moodle. There is a link to this course in your resource guide. So be sure to take a look at that if you are responsible for ELPAC. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Moses Jorge to talk about important information and updates.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, everybody. Oh, it seems like just yesterday we were all together in a coffee session, doesn't it? Thank you guys again for taking the time and taking this to heart to be back with us again for this important part of the work that you do. Thank you guys again for being with us last night or yesterday. for the coffee session. Before we get into the meat of everything that Dina introduced you to that we were going to cover, I want to take a minute to make sure if anybody has joined us and you haven't had a second to get yourself ready, before we go any further, in the chat, if I'm not mistaken, my colleague Tyler has been posting the perfect, wonderful link that you need. If you have not yet opened up the Padlet, it's already got some incredibly valuable information there, and along with this PowerPoint. So take a minute, get yourself situated, make sure that you click on that link that Tyler just posted again in the chat that takes you right to the Padlet. And the first thing that you should see right when you get to the Padlet is where to download this PowerPoint. So as you are now, like Dina said, wrapping things up, getting this next step ready to go, which is the important step of making sure that everybody that has worked so hard gets to see their results. This is why we're here today, and make sure that you use this PowerPoint as a resource also. So again, the Padlet, we have our partners from the CDE here. They've already started to interject some of their wisdom into some of the questions that you've posted and have provided some great answers for you. And as we go through this section that has so much meat to it, please take the time, and I will pause at different points in this section to allow you to think through and post any questions that you might have for follow-up in the Padlet. So sit back. Here we go with regards to important information and some updates that we have for you. Starting with, on the next slide, if you haven't already heard, we have in March of 25, the State Board of Education approved some revisions to the reporting achievement level descriptors, or what we call the ALDs, for use in reporting, starting with the 2025-26 administration. Okay. The revisions were made to support clear interpretation of student achievement here now in ELA, mathematics, and science. Okay. They do not impact the comparability of student assessment results, though, from year to year, as they do not change the level of rigor in the assessment, nor do they change the cut scores for each assessment level. Okay, especially if this is the first time you're hearing about this, take a second to process this and those two details that I just gave you about what changes and what doesn't. Okay, the new labels are going to be level 4 advanced, level 3 proficient, level 2 developing, and level 1 minimum. Okay, here another important point if you haven't yet done so. You see the Padlet that you opened up? If you scroll down just a little bit on the first column, you're going to see this incredibly important other document aside from the PowerPoint that I'm going to probably reference and mention a dozen times just in this section. So we developed what's called a toolkit. Together with the CDE and our team at ETS, we developed for you, with regards to the new achievement level descriptors, a toolkit of resources that you could use to message this change to all of your stakeholders and all of your audiences. Please, in the Padlet, there's this thing called a resource guide. If you open the resource guide, you'll see a link that takes you to this toolkit that's referenced here that has for you, the LEAs, ready to use resources to communicate this important new change to the various audiences that you need to get this information into their hands. Take a minute, download the resource guide, and you will be able to access this toolkit. Now, we know that the results are coming, so moving right along. We want to talk a little bit for a moment about the use of the assessment results. This year, the California School Dashboard and the statewide assessments results will both be released by October 15th. Please don't wait, though, until the October release of the statewide data to start to use your data for local purposes. Data started to become available in TOMS and the California Educator Reporting System, CERS, as soon as results were validated by the CDE, starting back in mid to late May, which is much sooner than the public release of the data in October. Now, we recommend that local educational agencies, or you guys, the LEAs, wait until a sufficient portion of the data has populated before beginning analysis to avoid drawing conclusions from incomplete data. All data will be available in TOMS and CERS by August, with many LEAs receiving their full data set earlier than that. Now, LEAs are strongly encouraged to start using their local assessment data for planning as soon as the results start to become available. LEA coordinators, you can access the student score data file in TOMS. And California educators with a TOMS account can start accessing student level data in CERS. Okay, I see you guys are using the Padlet. Good. Take a second, think this through, see if there are any questions that come to mind that you might want to jot in the Padlet as we move on. So now, where specifically can we find the results? So to give you a brief overview, CAASPP and ELPAC results can be found in several places. As I mentioned, from TOMS, LEA coordinators and site coordinators can download SSRs, or student score reports, for individual students or in bulk. Also available is the SSR availability report, which contains a list of the students whose SSRs have been made available. LEA coordinators can download student score data files in TOMS, and those files contain individual assessment records for all students tested or enrolled in your LEA. Also in CERS, users can access individual student and aggregate group results. And then finally, the public statewide LEA level and school level results. Those will be available no later than October 15th. On the test results for California's assessment, or commonly referred to the TRCA website. Okay, we'll discuss these systems individually a little bit later. For now, let's go over a general timeline of when you can expect to receive scores and some of the reports. That said, take a quick little glimpse at this little layout. And again, this PowerPoint is available for you to use as a resource as you message this information. So, scores for the Smarter Balanced summative assessments and the CAST are available after enough assessments have been taken statewide for ETS to perform our quality control procedures. LEAs fine-tune their testing schedules each year, and as a result, the data when scores are predicted to come out can be a little bit different from year to year. The schedule is always tentative until scores are released, but in general, the volume needed to check quality is usually reached by May. So, as a reminder, CAST results are included on the same SSR as the Smarter Balanced summative assessments for ELA and math, and all three CAAs, ELA, math, and science, are combined into one SSR. This means that the SSRs will be available once scores for all three assessments are available. Now, for example, if a grade 5 student completed their Smarter Balance summative assessments, but they took CAST a week after, the SSR will not be generated until all three tests are scored and ready for reporting. So this means that if any of the three tests were started but not submitted, the system will force complete the test at the end of the testing window, and the student's SSR will not be generated until late summer. So think that through, and we're going to dive a little bit more into details on this issue a little bit later in this section. The dates for CAASPP results release are as follows. For the Smarter Balance summative assessments for ELA, math, and CAST, results in SIRS and student score data files were released in TOMS on May 14th, and SSRs were released in TOMS on May 15th. Now, after that first release of results, the ongoing release of SSRs will occur daily. Now, for the CAAs, for ELA, mathematics, and science, results in SIRS, the student score data files in TOMS, and SSRs in TOMS are estimated to be available in late August. And now, for the CSA, or the California Spanish Assessment, results in SIRS, the student score data file in TOMS, and SSRs in TOMS. For the CSA, those are also estimated to be available in late August. And finally, all aggregate CAASPP results will be publicly released to the TRCA website by October 15th. Okay, take a second, process that, take a look at the table. The Padlet is getting good traffic, so that's great. Now, moving along, for ELPAC, we just talked about the CAASPP, now for ELPAC. For summative ELPAC and the summative alternate ELPAC, for kindergarten through grade 12, results in SIRS and the student score data files, those were released in TOMS again back on May 14th, and the SSRs were released in TOMS on May 15th. ETS again must receive all completed kindergarten through grade 2 writing answer books to be scored. So LEAs, you must ship your materials to ETS, and take a look at the sentence, take a look at this next date, because we are working feverishly with you all this week. For those K2 books, they must be shipped to ETS before June 12th. And we need to receive them by June 19th for scoring. For the initial ELPAC and the initial alternate ELPAC, student score data files and SSRs are available year-round in TOMS. And again, all aggregate ELPAC results will be publicly released to the TRCA website again by October 15th. So there is your information about CAASPP and ELPAC. And again, now hear the message. Do not wait. This early release of local data, it allows educators to start reviewing their summative assessment results far in advance of the public release. Teachers and administrators will have the ability to review the data and start planning prior to the close of the school year, making the data even more actionable. As you begin data review and analysis earlier, please consider sharing early insights with LEA leadership and instructional teams. Consider holding planning meetings and instructional discussions before the close of the year, and leveraging local data to support students and program changes much, much sooner. So don't wait. Take a second, take a look at the Padlet, think through, see if there's anything not only that you might want to ask and follow up with, but some of the incredibly good questions that your colleagues are asking and that our team members are having the opportunity to give you more information, again, in that Padlet. So moving right along, data preview. Prior to that release of the data to the public on the TRCA website, LEAs, you will have what we call early access to the data to be able to preview. The purpose of this preview is to allow LEAs early access to their aggregate results and to allow you the opportunity to confirm that all student enrollment and tested counts are accurate. So there are some demographic fields that get locked. And as in previous years, some of those fields are locked upon a student's first testing event for any summative assessment. And another smaller set of demographic fields now lock upon a student's first testing event for the summative ELPAC or summative alternate ELPAC. Okay, a full list of these changes was sent out in an email to the field, to you all, back in January. And a link to that archived email is in that resource guide that I mentioned that's in the Padlet. But we'll also briefly review them in the next couple of slides. So locked fields are identified in the student's score data file for testing under that category. These changes improve data accuracy by locking key demographics at the start of testing and preventing post-test changes and ensuring that data is consistent. So what fields are we talking about? Fields locked when a student begins summative assessments are listed here. So again, when a student begins summative assessments or a domain, these are the fields, take a minute, read them through, that lock when a student first takes and starts a summative assessment or any domain in the ELPACs. Good. Now, here's a second set of locked demographic fields. Additional fields that are locked when a student begins the summative ELPAC or the summative alternate ELPAC are these that are listed here, these three: date of birth, ELOS, and primary language. Good on that? Now, after the adoption of the Smarter Balance Adjusted Blueprints, the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium released composite claim information. So now let's delve into a little bit of the different levels of data that become available. So for starters, composite claim results are reported for Smarter Balance assessments for ELA and mathematics in SIRS and on the SSRs for individual students. Now, aggregate composite claims Those are reported on the TRCA website. Careful with this detail. For groups of 11 or more. Now, we'll cover those composite claims in more detail shortly. Aggregate results for individual claims, those are available for student groups of 30 or more. So please, I know this is one of those details that you sometimes go, what? Okay. Make sure you have this PowerPoint to take with you for when you go back and you're starting to make sense of especially details like this of how many in order for the results to be reported at this level. This PowerPoint will be invalid. So let's delve a little bit deeper into claims versus targets. Before we dive further into detail about the various measures being reported, let's take a moment to review some key terms used in the Smarter Balance Assessment design and reporting. The Smarter Balance assessments are aligned with what you know are the Common Core state standards in ELA and mathematics. However, state standards are primarily phrased in a manner to guide instruction. Okay, the claims and targets within the assessment blueprints take the content and language of the state standards and ensures they are phrased in a way that guides assessment. So using evidence-centered design, these claims and targets, they allow us to make clear statements about what a student knows and can do in relation to the academic standards. So, for example, claims are broad categories or statements. They summarize the knowledge and skills that students are expected to demonstrate on assessments related to a particular aspect of the academic standard. Each content area measures 4 claims. In math, the claims are concepts and procedures, problem solving, communicating reasoning, and modeling data analysis. In ELA, the 4 are reading, writing, speaking and listening, and research or inquiry. Now, those were claims. Let's take it one level further. Targets. Targets describe a more granular level. The expectations of the knowledge, the skills, or the abilities assessed by the items and the tasks within each claim. So a target can be aligned with one or more standards. So for example, the ELA content area has a reading claim, and within this claim, there is a grade 5 specific target that's called central ideas. That's defined by the ability to identify or determine a theme or central idea from details in the text or summarize the text. This assessment target is aligned with that grade 5 Common Core ELA standard. So for more detail on the topic of claims and targets, the Smarter Balance has developed this great tool that's called the Smarter Content Explorer. If I'm not mistaken, it might be linked on your resource guide. It is a great tool that allows you to explore this idea of content area specific claims and grade specific targets for the assessments. And yep, a link to that tool is in your resource guide. Okay, take a second before we move on now to the next level. Good on the Padlet. Okay, we talked about claims versus targets. Now, here's another level, composite claim results. Composite claim results for Smarter Balance, ELA and Math, those are also available in SIRS and on the SSRs. These composite claim results are also available on SIR's individual student score report, or the ISR, and were new last year. For the ELA, the claims reading and speaking listening have been combined to report the composite claim called reading and listening. And now also the writing and research claims, those have been combined. And for mathematics, the concepts and procedures claim will be reported as is. However, the problem solving, communicating, reasoning, and modeling and data analysis claims, those have been combined into the composite claim mathematical practices. So these results, these composite results, are all calculated from all items in the composite. As mentioned, these composite claim results are available not only in SIRS, but also on the SSRs for the parents and guardians to be able to see and access those results. Okay, a little more about aggregate claims. Composite claim results, referred to as composite areas on the student score report and TRCA, those will also be available on the TRCA website, here again, for groups of 11 or more. And for individual claim results, referred to as areas on the TRCA website, those will continue to be available on the TRCA website for groups of 30 or more. Okay, target reports. Let's delve a little bit into target reports. Target reports are available in SIRS. Here again, I need to say this because of how much I know this is going to come up. You are not going to remember every one of these details that I'm giving you about the different kind and at what number of students. Please make sure you have this PowerPoint to work with as you are now taking this information back to your sites and to your LEAs. Because now, for target reports that we know are available in SIRS, for groups of 30 students or more, target reports with, now here, listen, another two details that have to go together. For groups of 30 students or more, for targets with more than 10 items in the pool is when they are available in SIRS. So groups without this criteria, sometimes you're going to go in and you're going to see that it says insufficient data. Okay, here goes. Groups without this criteria that I just mentioned of 30 students or more with 10 items in the pool or more, if you got groups without that criteria, it will show as insufficient data. Okay, target reports can provide insight into student performance as a group in particular target areas. Okay, through the target reports, you can view student performance on a specific target relative to that group of students' performance on the assessment as a whole, or relative to the standard met threshold. So target reports can be found within custom aggregate reports as soon as enough results are in SIRS. Target results in SIRS are also available to teachers for their assigned groups with, here we go again, 30 or more students, and the target results can be accessed through the results drop-down menu before the list of individual student results. So here again, as you're navigating SIRS and you're trying to make sense as to where and for who, this PowerPoint is invaluable. If you would like to get more information about these target reports and SIRS, you can review the assessment target reports FAQ or attend one of the SIRS trainings that Dina was telling you about at the beginning of our session today. Okay, just a little bit more. Let's delve into claim and target reports with some details around where and when. So, to summarize, this slide provides you a little table that outlines the availability status, the location, and the estimated release and conditions of claim and target results that we just covered a few slides up. So, for example, composite claim results for individual students, they are available in SIRS, SSRs, and do you remember what the ISRs are? Okay. On the TRCA website, abbreviated here, composite claim results, those are reported again for groups of 11 or more, and individual claim results are reported for groups of 30 or more. And lastly, target. Target scores, those are available in SIRS for groups of 30 or more with 10 or more items in that pool. So, you know, all those slides I covered before this one, here you go. Hopefully this slide helps to organize it in a concise way as you go forward, making sense of where, what, and when. So there is this one last thing called the WER. Take a second. The acronym that stands for the Writing Extended Response. Okay. Those scores continue to be available on the SSRs. The Understanding the Smarter Balanced Writing Extended Response question PDF is available as a resource for you, and it's linked in your resource guide. It's a PDF that addresses this specific data point. And additionally, some students were randomly administered an embedded field test item this year. And if a student participated in the embedded field test, they will not receive a score for this WER portion of their assessment. And field test questions are used to test questions, to ensure validity and reliability and fairness of new test questions before we launch them to use as student scores producers. Some more data that's available to you is data for the CAAs, or the California Alternate Assessments. You may have noticed in an earlier slide that the CAAs for ELA in math and science results will be available in late August. Please note that additional analysis after the testing window closes is required for these assessments, the CAA for science specifically. So, for the CAA for science cohort reporting continues to be available for the high school CAA for science. So like the CAS cohort reporting, the TRCA website will show how the entire class of eligible grade 12 students performed on the high school CAA for science, regardless of whether they tested in grade 10, 11, or 12. These aggregate results will be available in the fall on the TRCA website and labeled HS class of 2026. Please note that, or at least remember that it's going to have a specific label called HS class of 2026. And it's for student groups of 11 or more. And this will not include students who are repeating grade 12, as you well know, with regards to that assessment. Now, student level science cohort results, they are included in the CAASPP student score data file that you can download from Tom's. An indicator on that file has been added to identify whether the student is a current year tester or a prior year tester. That indicator will help you as you're looking at that file that you've downloaded from Tom's. Okay. And now, the last of our data points, the CSA results, or the California Spanish Assessment. Overall scale scores, overall achievement levels, and domain performance levels will be reported for the CSA and will be available in that student score data file that's in Tom's, the SSRs, and inserts. Now, don't forget, for the high school grade band, composite scores and achievement levels for the CSA will be available. The CSA composites, they are oral literacy, which is composed from the speaking and listening domains. They also include written literacy, which is composed from the reading and writing domains. And as resources for you, if you've not visited this wonderful other tool called the Lexile and Quantile Hub, take a minute. I know it's linked in your resource guide, but there is this amazing tool called the Lexile and Quantile Hub, which provides useful instructional tools for educators to differentiate instruction based on student Lexile and Quantile scores that comes from the data. These scores are included directly on the student's SSR. If they receive the score for the Smarter Balanced ELA assessment or the Smarter Balanced Math assessment, this will be included right on the SSR. The CDE has partnered with Metametrics to offer statewide at no cost access to this Lexile and Quantile tool and resources for all families and educators in California. And these tools can be accessed from the Lexile and Quantile Hub. The hub is optimized across various types of devices, including phones and tablets. There's also a resource center that brings together instructional materials, such as decodable passages, vocabulary lists, and a variety of other mathematics supports. And in addition to this, there are user guides that are available for each tool. A new district toolkit also gives schools and their LEAs clear and actionable strategies for putting Lexile and Quantile measures into practice. And recordings of the Lexile and Quantile virtual trainings that were facilitated by Metametrics at the beginning of this test administration year, those are also available. Now, the URL for the upcoming and on-demand trainings webpage, where these past trainings can be found, it's in your resource guide, linked there. So please know that you can go there. Lastly, for your SSRs, some updates. A couple of changes will be made to the SSR this year. As mentioned before, don't forget the huge new reporting ALDs will be used for reporting Smarter Balanced ELA, mathematics, and CAST. And additionally, the dashed line. Remember that dashed line on the measurement gauge? It has been removed for both CAST and ELPAC. Previously, a common misconception might have been that students who scored at a level 1 or 2 were performing below grade level. Misconception. However, all levels represent a range of grade level achievement. And then if you haven't heard about the wonderful optional resource that's available to you, the video student score reports are available now for the 2025-26 school year for CAASPP, Smarter Balance ELA and Math, which is a single video that combines both. We also have a video score report for summative ELPAC. And new for this year, we also offer a video score report for the initial ELPAC. And the information about purchasing them is available on this slide. As you could see, it's $1.50 per video. That cost includes both English and other languages for students whose primary language is something other than English. And these videos can be personalized with the student's name, the school logo, and the school name. And these videos can help if you have not seen them. I urge you to go to the link in your resource guide that takes you to the website where you can see in greater detail what this resource offers. Additional video SSR languages that I said are available for the same price that you would get the English are listed here on these slides. But again, there's a link on your resource guide that takes you to the website with all of the information about the video SSRs. And boy, take a second before we move on to section 4. Take a break, take a second. No, don't leave. Just give your mind a break. Wonderful traffic on the Padlet. So before we transition to the next section, take a second. There are some wonderful questions that your colleagues have posted in the Padlet and that have been answered. And with that, Dina, thank you so much. I hand it right back to you.
Thank you so much, Moses. We really appreciate that information. And we're actually going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. There was a lot of information that Moses shared with us. So we'll give you a moment to digest it, get up and stretch, and we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break before we head into our next section, which is talking about accessing results and reports. So go ahead and get up and stretch your legs, grab some water, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes. And so that'll take us to 5 after 2. Welcome back, everyone. We just got back from our 5-minute break, and I hope that was um, nice to just process all of the information and get you ready to move ahead. Before we do jump ahead to the next section, I want to ask the team covering Padlet. If there are any questions that you have received regarding anything that we've already covered, I know we've got still some more subjects moving ahead that we might not have covered, but anything that we've already covered, is there anything that you received in Padlet that would be a good idea to maybe talk over?
Hey Dina, this
Yay.
is Tyler.
Hey, Tyler.
There's a lot of stuff in the Padlet right now. I think that we've covered a lot of the questions either in the slides already, or they're going to be they're going to come up in the next couple of sections. There's nothing that's jumping out to me right now as like super important that we should bring up right at this moment, but we'll keep an eye out. And yeah, do your best if you're adding questions to Padlet to look through what's been asked already, and to look through the resource guide for links and things like that. But I'll put the Padlet link in the chat one more time for folks if you missed it or joined us late.
Thank you, Tyler. And be sure to take a look at the agenda, which is in the slides and the resource guide. I think there might be some questions in the Padlet that are asking for some information that we might cover. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of just inquiries on information. So we may be covering some things that you're asking about. So moving ahead, we're going to go ahead and talk about accessing results and reports. And we'll go ahead and call on Kelly Bolton to go ahead and talk us through that.
Thanks, Dina. I am Kelly Bolton. My name is Kelly Bolton, but I am the scoring and reporting manager at ETS. And so I'm going to give you guys an overview of TOMS, SIRS, the test results for California's Assessments or TRCA website, and then describe how to access important information and reports from these different sources. So you are likely familiar with TOMS as the one-stop shop for adding users, placing test material orders, and more. It is also where you can find the My TOMS at a Glance dashboard and where you can go to download SSRs, the student score data files, and other related reports. So let's start with My TOMS at a Glance, which is accessible from the homepage once you log on to TOMS. My TOMS at a Glance for CAASPP will allow users to access a comprehensive summary for their LEA. This feature allows users to access general information regarding their LEA, the number of students who've completed each assessment, and demographics for all enrolled students. You can also view information about your testing windows, the test status that includes the percent started and percent completed by assessment, and then also scoring status information. LEAs can view the statuses for ELA and mathematics separately. And additionally, LEAs can select from the test administration year drop-down list in order to view either the current or previous test administration year. My TOMS at a Glance for ELPAC is pretty similar to what you have for CAASPP, same features. So users will also find the test status for the initial and summative ELPAC, as well as the initial alternate and summative alternate ELPAC, and include the following. So started indicates the number of students who have started at least one domain. Complete indicates the number of students who have completed all 4 domains. For the summative ELPAC K2 writing, complete is when the LEA ships and the answer book has been received and scanned. Test completion status also includes the number of students not tested since their enrollment date for the initial or initial alternate ELPAC. As a reminder, there's the 30-day timeline for initial ELPAC administration. So this helps you keep an eye on those students who still need to test. Test status by domain displays the percentage of students who have started and completed each of the domains of the selected assessment. It even breaks down the speaking domain information into 2 status bars, one for the TDS or test delivery system, and then another one for the data entry interface. Underneath test completion status, the student score report status section displays the percentage of students whose scores have been released. This screenshot shows the percentage of scores released for each ELPAC assessment. Just like for CAASPP, the ELPAC SSR status widget allows LEAs to view the current or previous test administration year from the test administration year drop-down list. And then at the bottom of the page, the THSS status by days past enrollment, that's for the teacher hand scoring system. This section will display the counts of initial ELPAC writing domain responses, specifically for grades 3 through 5, because those are the online writing assessments that have not been completed. So you can view the number of items that are not scored or are only tentatively scored by days past enrollment. And this can help you monitor whether students need their responses scored in THSS in order to complete testing within the 30 days since their enrollment. So the majority of LEAs have completed test administration at this point in the year, but we would like to emphasize the importance of regularly communicating with your CalPADS coordinator leading up to and during test administration. My TOMS at a glance reflects only the data that is available in TOMS. So if there's a problem with student information system or your SAS, or the transfer process between your SAS and CalPADS, that data will not be reflected on the My TOMS at a glance dashboard. And as previously mentioned, TOMS is also where you go to download the SSRs, the student score data files, and related reports. So all of these reports can be found in the Reports tab on TOMS, and they're updated multiple times a week. SSRs are also available in an HTML format that can be accessed from the Students tab. So we'll go into detail about the different report options in just a moment. Many LEAs choose to distribute SSRs electronically via the SIS, often called a parent or a student portal. To avoid delays, you should ensure that your SIS vendor has up-to-date credentials, and you can check when the credentials expire and then copy the code by selecting the Credentialing tab in TOMS. Some LEAs choose to download SSRs from TOMS and then print them and then distribute them to parents or guardians. Note that the TOMS user guide can be retrieved by selecting the user guide button from the TOMS homepage. It is strictly a web-based manual. The tab for My TOMS at a glance is also available from this homepage. The Reports tab at the far right of the navigation bar will allow access to available reports. You just select the report that you want to download. Some reports are downloaded immediately, others take time to generate and are therefore sent to the Requested Reports screen. LEA reports can be accessed only by the LEA coordinator. These contain data that is associated with the user's LEA. LEA reports are available for both CAASPP and ELPAC. Site reports can be accessed by either LEA coordinators or site coordinators. And site reports contain data associated with the user's role and school site. The reports that are relevant to today's training are the LEA level SSR availability report, the student score data file, and the PDF SSRs. These are available for both CAASPP and ELPAC depending on what role you select when you're logging into TOMS. All right, the first one, the LEA level SSR availability report. This is going to give you a list of students who tested at the selected LEA and also have SSRs that are available for download. The CAASPP report, there will be general or alternate assessment SSR column that indicates the type of assessment administered. And this column is followed by the ELA Mathematics Science SSR delivery date column, and then also the CSA SSR delivery date. And that will be listed once the SSR becomes available, if applicable. Obviously, if you are not administering CSA, you won't end up with a date in that column. As previously mentioned, though, the ELA Mathematics and Science SSR will become available only once results for all 3 assessments have been received. For the ELPAC report, you will need to first select the test program or assessment before you can download the report. The report will also include a delivery date column and then list the date that the SSR became available, if applicable. The next report is the student score data file for CAASPP and ELPAC, and these contain a wide range of information for students who tested during a particular administration. In this file, users can find student results, the demographic information and accessibility resources, as well as test status and completion information. The student score data files are updated daily with additional results as they become available. So note that this means that you may find student results in the data file before the SSR is available. While the CAASPP student score data file includes results for students who tested this year, it will also include high school science results for students enrolled in grade 12, even if they tested in previous years. These reports can be downloaded so that all student results can be uploaded into the LEA's SIS. LEA coordinators can download the data file either by enrolled LEA or by tested LEA. We'll talk a little bit more about that right about now. So from the list of available reports, select either the CAASPP student score data file report or the summative ELPAC and summative alternate ELPAC student score data file report, depending on the role when you log into TOMS. You'll select an organization and the test administration year from the drop-down lists, and then you're going to be asked to select the report type. Again, you can either choose by enrolled LEA or by tested LEA. So for both CAASPP and ELPAC, the by enrolled LEA report will include students who are enrolled in the LEA at the time the report is being generated and has results available, regardless of where the student tested. And also for both CAASPP and ELPAC, the by tested LEA file will contain students who tested with the LEA before the end of the year and have results available. So it just depends on what data you are actually seeking. So from this page, there are also links to the CAASPP student data file layout or the summative ELPAC and summative alternate ELPAC student data file layout documents for the current year and previous test administration years. The student data file layouts will include field descriptions, the acceptable values for all of the fields, and the data sources. The data on the TRCA website aligns most closely with the data in the by tested LEA report type of the student score data file. And you will end up using the by tested LEA data file to verify your aggregate student counts and your demographics during the LEA preview coming up this fall. The by enrolled LEA version continually updates to include newly enrolled students in your LEA. All right, LEAs can download the full data file or a partial data file by using the score available date filter. The start date is auto-populated as January 19th, 2026 for CAASPP as the opening of the window. And for ELPAC, it's auto-populated with February 1st, 2026. And then the end date is populated with the current date. So if you're downloading today, it would be June 11th. Using the auto-populated dates, we'll download all available student data. But as a tip, for the first requested report, you probably want to leave those auto-populated dates as they are set to get all of the data. And then for subsequent reports, you may want only new assessment records. And if that's the case, then you would want to use the end date from the last report you pulled and put that as your start date, and then leave the auto-populated end date as today's date, the current date. In the rare case where students were exempted from testing for one or more CAASPP assessments by a parent or guardian exemption, PGE, or a not tested due to medical emergency, or NTE, but the exemption was entered after the student started testing, any resulting score will not be reported on the student's record in the student score data file. This is because a PGE or NTE condition code will override a score. But please note, PGE or NTE condition codes can only be applied to tests that have not been submitted by the student. So a PGE or NTE cannot be applied if the student has already submitted the test. And another note is that students with a PGE or NTE are reported in July at the end of the statewide testing window. And this has to do with the processing that needs to occur in order to ensure everything is applied properly. All right, PDF SSRs. They are available for both CAASPP and ELPAC, and both LEA coordinators and site coordinators can access the PDF SSRs in TOMS. So after selecting the Reports Navigation tab in TOMS, you would select the LEA Reports or Site Reports Action tab. And then from the available reports list, you'll select Student Score Reports PDFs. And you'll be given the option to download either an individual PDF or individual SSR PDFs or one merged file containing all the SSRs in one PDF. So you'll have options available on your screen to generate a bulk download. And if you do that, you will select the organization, the schools, the grade levels, the score report language, and the assessments for which you would like the SSRs. And you would need to also select the SSR date range. The bulk download contains SSRs only for the students who were tested in the specified LEA and not for students tested elsewhere that have since enrolled in the LEA. You would use the download PDFs by requested SSID or multiple SSIDs section to download up to 10 SSRs. This can also be used for students who tested elsewhere but are now enrolled in your LEA or site. The LEA and site coordinators can view an individual student's PDF SSR or HTML SSR in TOMS by navigating to the Students tab, searching for a student, and then selecting the Reporting tab in their profile. At the bottom of the student's reporting page is the electronic and paper SSRs table. And under the HTML SSR link column, you can select View HTML SSR links, and a pop-up window will then list all available HTML SSR links. On the same table, you can also access links to the PDF SSRs under the PDF SSR link column. Note that these links are for internal use only by LEA or site coordinators. Links to the electronic PDF SSRs and web-based HTML SSRs can only be distributed to parents and guardians through the LEA's SIS. The links in TOMS offer coordinators a preview of the parent and guardian view of the SSR for reference, but it cannot be used to distribute SSRs. All right. As Moses mentioned, the CDE has partnered with Metametrics to provide Lexile and quantile measures to students who take the Smarter Balance for ELA and mathematics assessments. The Lexile and quantile frameworks measure student reading and mathematics performance, respectively. The Lexile score measures a student's current reading level, and it can be used to find books that are suitable to the student's Lexile range. A student's quantile score measures a student's mathematics ability, and it can be used to determine a student's readiness for instruction on certain mathematical concepts or skills. Since these scores are generated on the basis of a student's Smarter Balance for ELA and mathematics assessment scale scores, students don't need to take any additional assessments in order to receive this score. Lexile and quantile scores are included directly on the SSRs with Smarter Balance for ELA and mathematics assessment results. Like previous years, you may also view individual students' Lexile and quantile scores in SIRS. Lexile and quantile measures are also available with the Interim Comprehensive Assessments, or ICAs. Note that the Lexile and quantile measure for ICAs are only available within SIRS. LEAs can use these measures in conjunction with the ICAs to find instructional materials at the appropriate level for their students. There's many ways that the Lexile and quantile measures can support learning, and later in today's webinar, we'll share some additional tools and resources that can help educators, parents and guardians, and students get the most of these measures. Okay, SIRS. SIRS is the tool for educators to view student data, given specific user roles and permissions. You can access SIRS from the CAASPP and ELPAC website homepage. You can also navigate to SIRS from TOMS through the Links tab. Note the following about SIRS. So SIRS allows users to access individual and aggregate student test results for CAASPP, the summative ELPAC, and the summative alternate ELPAC. The official SSRs for distribution to families are only available within TOMS. In SIRS, reports for individual students are called ISRs. The ISR in SIRS is a generated score report meant to be used by educators because educators can access results in SIRS prior to the release of SSRs. SIRS data can be used for planning purposes. After overall quality control procedures are complete, results will begin to populate in SIRS daily as they are reported. Test reports are available, but access will be dependent upon the permissions associated with a user's role. A student's ELA, mathematics, and science results are all reported in SIRS independently of each other. This means that you don't need to wait for the scores for all subjects to be reported simultaneously like you do for an SSR. If you only find results for one subject, the others may still be processing. And this might mean, again, that you will find some students in SIRS for whom you do not yet have an SSR in TOMS. Information is included in the interface to help you distinguish between students who received a summative ELPAC domain exemption versus students who did not test in a domain and had no domain exemption. Appeals and exemptions on any assessment are not called out in SIRS. As a result, the aggregate results may differ slightly from what will be reported in the TRCA website. The SIRS user guide will describe features of SIRS and provide detailed instructions for using each of the features, including common scenarios. The SIRS user guide includes reports for CAASPP summative assessments, summative ELPAC, summative alternate ELPAC, and the interim assessments. Directions are provided on how to view test data at individual and group levels and how to create custom reports. It outlines the TOMS user roles and their permissions in SIRS, including creating and managing student groups so that teachers have access to their students' results. In addition to the SIRS user guide, the Understanding SIRS video is available separately. So there's lots of resources to be able to figure out what you need in SIRS. There are 2 buttons on the SIRS resources webpage found on the CAASPP and ELPAC website. One of them is to log on to SIRS, and the other one is to access the SIRS sandbox. Because the SIRS sandbox is publicly available, there is no logon needed in order to access it. You will be asked to choose your role for viewing the data, either as a educator or an administrator, and then at the different grade levels, or elementary, middle, and high school. So please note there is no secure information that is stored in the SIRS sandbox, and it will not save any changes that you make. The SIRS sandbox is really intended to be used as a training tool in order to help LEA staff learn about the features and the functions of SIRS. The interface and the functions are the same, but it uses practice test items and fictitious student data. Once you're logged on to SIRS, those who have LEA or site coordinator roles assigned to them can access administrator tools and assessment results. Administrator tools include creating custom aggregate reports, running LEA and school exports, which allows for analysis in another application, creating and managing student groups, which we'll talk about in a moment, and accessing instructional resources, which can be uploaded into the system. To access assessment results, you can search by student or search for assessment results by school and specific or multiple grade levels. Users who have groups of students assigned to them will access those groups on the SIRS homepage, and the group will appear on the student or under the student groups button. LEA and CAASPP and ELPAC coordinators can create and manage student groups, also known as rosters, using the student groups button. So from the Manage Student Groups screen, a student group CSV file will need to be uploaded into the SIRS interface. And you can find directions on how to do that in the SIRS user guide. Once student groups are created, teachers will then have access to their students' test results. It's also possible to set up automatic rostering if you have your SIS integrate with SIRS. To set up that integration, you'll want to contact your SIS vendor. And more information about that is available on the SIS SIRS vendor integration webpage. In addition to a link in the SIRS user guide, the resource guide links to the Creating Groups in SIRS video, which has information on student groups and automatic rostering. Now we'll talk about the TRCA website, also referred to as Public Web Reporting website. This website provides information about all of the California assessments and makes aggregate data from these assessments available to the public. From the homepage, users can access aggregate test results for the following assessment options: Smarter Balanced summative assessments for ELA and mathematics, CAST, CAAs for ELA and mathematics, CAA for science, CSA, initial and initial alternate ELPAC, and then summative and summative alternate ELPAC. LEAs will be notified by email prior to the public release of results when access is available to preview the aggregate LEA and school data, including results for each student group, and that will be prior to the launch of the TRCA website, which occurs annually by October 15th. So October 15th, 2026 is our date for this year. During the embargoed preview period, LEAs will be able to vet their results and make additional comparisons. We ask that you don't share other LEAs' results until after the public release. Statewide results are embargoed until the official release, which again is on or before October 15th. And reminder, Moses said this previously, don't wait. Start using your assessment results for planning before the end of the school year. They have been flowing since May, and they should be used to the best of your ability. So let's take a deeper look at the reported data that is available within TRCA. So from the home page, you can select an assessment for which you would like to view aggregate results. You'll be directed to the Test Results at a Glance webpage, where you'll see a visual representation of the test results. So if you select the ELA and mathematics assessments, you'll have a circle chart that represents the percentage of students within each achievement level, and that will populate for each subject area. These visualizations can be filtered by year, by grade level, student group, as well as school type. You can also search for a specific school to view its aggregate results. To better understand how the results are calculated, you can select the View Detailed Test Results button. And from here, you're going to be able to view the data by number, percent, or both. And you may also access the research files, which contain the same information presented in the detailed results section of the site. But these files are provided in order to allow for more complex analyses and customized reporting of the data. For Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments for ELA and Mathematics, aggregations of composite areas will be reported for groups of 11 or more students. And as we previously noted, the composite areas for ELA are reading and listening as one composite, and then writing and research as the second composite. And then for mathematics, the two composite areas are concepts and procedures, and then mathematical practices. Like last year, the aggregations of individual claims for groups of 30 or more students will continue to be reported. And users can select whether 25-26 CAASPP results display by number of students, percentage of students, or again, both. All right, for ELPAC results, again, similar data and reports are available for ELPAC, so it should be pretty familiar, including the following: overall performance by percent at each performance level and grade level, oral language and written language composites by percent at each performance level and grade level for the initial and summative ELPAC, and then results for each domain by percent at performance level and grade level for the summative ELPAC. So by selecting the View Detailed Test Results button, again, you'll be able to view the data by number, percent, or both. Okay, in addition, there are multiple other results comparisons that can be viewed in the TRCA at a glance webpage. And they include the school district state comparison, which is exactly as it sounds. It allows you to compare a selected school with the LEA and the state. The change over time report allows you to view how a group of students has progressed over consecutive test years. So, for example, how students in grade 6 have performed on ELA in grade 5, grade 4, grade 3. So, note this is only applicable to assessments taken over multiple consecutive test years. And so it is not available for initial ELPAC, which is taken once. Grade reports available for ELPAC provide the average overall scale score by grade level, as well as the overall oral language and written language score by grade level. And then there is the performance trend report. And these are available for Smarter Balance for ELA and mathematics assessments, for CAST, and the CSA. So this report will allow you to view the performance of 2 different student groups within a single grade over up to 5 administrations. Note that these additional comparison options for the CSA are only for a comparison between the current and prior year. All right, and finally, within the TRCA website, there is the Search and Compare Results tab. This tool will allow you to compare the results of up to 3 entities. These entities include results at the state, county, district, or school level. And this tool provides the option to compare results from these entities for a specific year, grade level, or student group. You can also select whether to only include charter schools or non-charter schools with this tool. All right. Whew, that was a lot. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to add to Padlet whatever questions you might have still that maybe didn't get covered by the accessing results. And then Dina.
Yes, we're going to do a 5-minute break right now. We'll be back in 5 minutes to cover scoring and maybe check in with the Padlet team at that time to see if there are any questions that came up that we might want to talk through. But yeah, for now, we'll go ahead and take a quick break. Yep. So thank you, Kelly. All right, welcome back, everyone. We just completed our 5-minute break, and I'm going to go ahead and check in on the team covering Padlet to see if there are any questions we want to highlight and maybe discuss a little before we head into the scoring segment.
Thank you, Dina. Hello, everyone. A lot of heavy topics, like just very dense information here in this in this webinar. So thanks for hanging out with us and asking such good questions on the Padlet. So first of all, I wanted to mention there's a lot of questions um, that are really specific cases, and we're doing our best to answer some of those, but a lot of the times we're going to refer you to your success agent. If you have not already made contact with a success agent, you should definitely do that. They're going to be so helpful, especially if you're new to your role or anything like that. I'll go ahead and put our contact page in the chat here in just a second. And just FYI, if most of the folks on today should be LEA or district coordinators, and they're the ones who can contact their success agent. If you're a site coordinator or a different role, you should contact your district coordinator, your LEA coordinator before contacting a success agent. But otherwise, yeah, they're going to be really helpful for a lot of these specific questions, or if you're seeing something that doesn't quite make sense to you, do not hesitate to reach out to them. They will either get you a quick answer, or they'll know who to go to figure it out for some of these things. I did want to mention that we've gotten a couple of questions about um, certain information that's missing in reports, or like there was one question about pulling a certain report that didn't have anyone in there, and some of those issues could be potentially related to exiting students in CalPads. If you have exited your students in CalPads, that can affect both what shows up in the completion status system or in certain TOMS reports as well. So that might be something to be aware of. You should still be able to access, all the information that you need. If you pull the tested student score data file, the by tested, that'll have all of your students that tested, even if they have been exited already. But if you need help navigating that, definitely reach out to your success agent. Trying to think of anything else here that folks have asked that might be helpful to cover. But I think there's just a wide variety of questions. We know there's a lot going on right now, so we'll keep an eye out on this Padlet, and yeah, just keep sending those questions in if you have something that's not already up here.
Thank you, Tyler. So we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. I know we have another webinar for new coordinators coming up at 3. So Kelly, if you're ready to go through the scoring section, it's all yours.
All right, home stretch, we're into scoring. So I'll give you an overview of scoring and share some information on the scoring methods and terminology, along with various scoring resources. So there are multiple methods of scoring that are used on CAASPP and ELPAC. Dina, next slide, please. And the type of scoring varies depending on the assessment, the domain, and even item type. So machine scored items, we call those deterministic, and that means that they have a predetermined correct answer. So for example, a multiple choice item. These items are scored through the test delivery system, TDS, or by scanning paper booklets to compare the student's response to the predetermined correct answer. Then we have our constructed response, or CR items, that require a student to write or speak an answer that they construct. such as a writing extended response, the WER, a short answer, or a speaking item. And so for CRs, there's 3 different methods that we use to score. Number 1, human scoring, and that requires a person to review the response and score that response using a rubric. However, this person is not a local test administrator or test examiner. For this scoring method, a professional rater is responsible for scoring. The second is for a subset of CRs, it is possible to use automated scoring. Automated scoring helps to reduce the turnaround time for delivering scores to teachers and parents and guardians. All the automated scoring processes do include human involvement to monitor the quality and the validity of the scoring process. And then 3, we have local scoring, which is a process where the CR items are rated by the test administrator or test examiner that is involved in the administration of the assessment. These items could be scored locally for various reasons. For example, we have parts of the CAAs that are locally scored because they are administered one-on-one with a test examiner who is familiar with that student and that student's response mode. Additionally, the initial ELPAC writing domain is scored locally for all grade levels, and that is to shorten the turnaround time of the results because, again, we know initial ELPAC is a time-sensitive assessment. And then CAT. You've likely heard the term Computer Adaptive Test, or CAT, and this refers to Smarter Balanced ELA in mathematics assessment or portion of an assessment that is administered on a computer, but it adjusts the item pool presented to the student based on their performance and skill level. So as a student takes the assessment and answers either correctly or incorrectly, the assessment itself adjusts the level of difficulty of the item to adapt to the student's skill level and then more accurately identify their ability. Because the assessment is adapted to the individual test taker, that means that students will come across different test items. They'll likely be in a different order, and the number of total items in an assessment may vary slightly between different students. So it's important to clarify that the term computer adaptive test is not the same as a computer-based assessment. A computer-based assessment simply refers to an assessment that is administered on a computer or other device. So not all assessments are adaptive, and not all parts of an assessment are adaptive. For example, the Smarter Balanced ELA domain is split into a CAT portion and also a performance task or PT portion. The PT prompts are grade specific and they're randomly assigned among students of that grade level, but they are not adaptive. Additionally, the CAAs for ELA and mathematics function a little bit differently. These assessments are called stage adaptive, and that means that the student performance on the first half or the first stage of the test influences the items on the second half of the assessment. For more information on this, you can check out the Testing Technology webpage on the Smarter Balanced website, and that's located in your resource guide. So in contrast to CATs, some assessments are linear. Linear assessments provide the same item pool to all students, and they do not adapt based on student performance and skill level. The item pool may be in a fixed order, or it could be randomized or varied in order to increase test security. So the CAST, the CAA for Science, the CSA, and all ELPAC assessments are linear assessments. Now, Haas and loss. You may have heard these terms in discussions around scoring. So Haas refers to a number that is the highest obtainable scale score, and loss is the lowest obtainable scale score. So these upper and lower limits of possible scores have been determined by the psychometric team when an assessment is first implemented, and they become the basis of the scale score ranges. The Haas is obtainable by answering all or nearly all questions correctly and earning the maximum points on the CR questions. The loss can be earned, the loss can be earned or assigned. So it can be earned by answering all or nearly all questions incorrectly, but it can also be assigned in special cases. For example, if a student answers too few questions, or when a student taking the ELPAC uses an approved unlisted resource, but that resource changes the construct of the assessment. So when a student is assigned the loss, for instance, that ELPAC example I just gave, a condition code is applied to the record, and that triggers special wording on the SSR. But students who earn the lowest obtainable score by answering all or nearly all questions incorrectly, they do not have a condition code applied, and so there is no special wording that is applied to the SSR. A common question we get, and I think it's in the Padlet, asks about how much weight the CAT and the PT portions each have in determining the total score for smarter balanced assessments. There is not a fixed weighting between the CAT and PT portions. All items, including PT items, vary in difficulty and contribute to the overall score on the basis of that difficulty. So for those who are interested in learning more about the scoring process, we encourage you to review the Basic Concepts of Item Response Theory, a non-mathematical explanation, and that is a PDF that is linked in your resource guide. For summative ELPAC, a domain exemption may be used if an EL student has a disability and that disability precludes them from accessing the assessment in one or more ELPAC domains, and there is no appropriate accommodation for the affected domain. So this use of a domain exemption is only granted in very rare cases, and it must be identified in the student's individualized education program, the IEP, or the Section 504 plan. And the process of applying one or more ELPAC domain exemptions will need to be done annually. So for a student to be assigned an overall score, the student will need to be assessed in at least one domain for both the oral language and written language composites of ELPAC. If a student has a domain exemption for one of the two domains in a composite, then the student's composite score will be calculated using only the non-exempted domain. But if a student does not test in a domain and does not have a domain exemption for that domain, then their composite score will still be calculated using both domains. For more detailed information on this topic, you can refer to the Summative ELPAC Scoring and Participation PDF, also linked in your resource guide. For Summative Alternate ELPAC, domain exemptions are not allowable. Remember, this assessment uses integrated task types that measure expressive, which is our speaking and writing domains, or receptive, which is our listening and reading domains, skills. And it's administered one-on-one by a test examiner who's familiar with the student. So the student can use their preferred mode of communication to respond to items. To be assigned an overall score and count for participation, the student must complete at least one receptive item and at least one expressive item. Please note that mark as no response is considered a valid response, and therefore it counts as a completed item. For more detailed info on this topic, you can refer to the alternate ELPAC participation and scoring PDF in your resource guide. And finally, for more in-depth information on scoring in general, we have the following resources. For more technical information, you can review the Smarter Balanced Scoring Specifications for Summative and Interim Assessments webpage. The Smarter Balanced Annotated Response Tool will help educators understand how student writing is scored on the Smarter Balanced assessments, and it supports writing instruction in the classroom. The Understanding the Smarter Balanced Writing Extended Response Question PDF is a resource that explains the WER in parent and guardian friendly way. And then the condition codes for the ELA WER PDF outlines all possible condition codes and categories that could be assigned to a writing extended response. And for people who want to take a deep dive into the technical side of things, you can refer to the CAASPP Technical Reports and Studies webpage for in-depth information about CAASPP, including information on scoring. All of these are linked in your resource guide. So I am going to hand it back to Dina because I think Moses maybe had to leave us for the other webinar.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks,
Okay.
Kelly. Thank you for powering through all of that information. And so we're going to go ahead and just keep it going. We have one last segment here, and this is communicating results. And so who needs the results? Results are needed by many educational partners, including LEA and school staff, parents and guardians, and local school boards, and other community members to inform educational decision making. Each of these groups uses results differently and receives them through different methods. LEA coordinators will receive score information such as the data files and SSRs through TOMS. You should work with your site coordinators to confirm that staff such as teachers have the appropriate user role assigned to them through SIRS. And so they need the appropriate TOMS role in order to access the SIRS information. And use the student group feature that we discussed earlier to assign groups to students, groups of students to teachers. Parents and guardians are also provided their children's results each year. We will discuss the responsibility of LEAs to provide results to parents and guardians in just a moment. Please don't wait until October to share the statewide data or to use it locally. All data will be available in TOMS and SIRS by August, and with many LEAs receiving their data set earlier than that. So keep an eye out for that. California regulations designate the time frame in which LEAs must provide parent and guardian notification of score availability and make results available to parents and guardians. The regulations are linked in your resource guide, but here are the basics. Within 20 working days after receiving CAASPP SSRs from the testing contractor, LEAs will need to provide clear instructions on how parents and guardians will access SSRs. If results are received after the end of the school year, you may deliver them at the beginning of the following year, within 20 working days of its start. The window for notifying parents and making SSRs available for ELPAC is 30 calendar days if received during the instructional year. If results are received after the end of the school year, they must be delivered within 15 working days of the start of the next school year. This SSR delivery timeline requirement starts from the date that the LEA receive all SSRs and TOMS, not from the date results are first received in the student score data file or in SIRS. And if LEAs provide SSRs to parents and guardians electronically, parents and guardians must be notified. If you are notifying by email, you should have a process in place on how to address emails that bounce back or are undeliverable. Optional parent-guardian letter templates and SSR samples can be found on the notification letter templates and the SSR and reporting resources web pages linked in your resource guide. As a reminder, LEAs can send summative ELPAC SSRs with the annual parent-guardian notifications at the beginning of the instructional year. These templates are found on the CDE's identification and parent notification requirements webpage and are state and federally mandated. Lastly, we want to make sure you are aware of the Starting Smarter website, which explains how to understand student results using family-friendly language. It contains sample SSRs, sample test questions, and resources for students and families. SSRs for CAASPP and ELPAC have links and QR codes that point to the Starting Smarter website. And with that, it brings us to the end of our presentation today. We'll just revisit quickly the learning goals and success criteria that we introduced at the beginning of the session. And we hope that you're now able to access and understand CAASPP and ELPAC scoring results and reporting information, determining the next steps and additional resources that can help effectively communicate results to educational partners, and to identify resources available to learn how to use the data. So we want to thank you. This was a lot of information that we gave you. Know that this was recorded, and so in about 2 weeks, we should have a recording that is available on the website. And you will also receive a survey link by email for feedback, and we appreciate your feedback. So thank you again for joining us. Be sure to take a look at the data leadership training series that begins next week. There are 4 sessions, and there is a registration link in your resource guide. I see a lot of thumbs up, and I really appreciate everyone that hung in there for 2 hours. Any new coordinators, please jump over to the new coordinator webinar that's happening now. And be sure to register for those webinars. Lots of great information. And thank you again for joining us, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dina.